Welcome to the Curious Room. Grab your cup of chai and just, settle in,
Yeah, take a breath.
right? Because the day is finally over. The world outside has gone completely quiet, and we have a really fascinating deep dive to unpack today.
We really do. It's a heavy one, but a good one.
Exactly. Our mission for this deep dive is to look at this very quiet, almost invisible habit that, honestly, I think we all share.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone does it.
It's this tendency to, withhold our energy or our love and our creativity because we feel we just aren't ready or worthy yet.
Right.
We're constantly saving our best selves for some imaginary later.
And it is an incredibly heavy weight to carry around, isn't it?
Oh, it really is.
I mean, we walk through our days telling ourselves, we'll start that project when we know more. Or we'll speak up in that meeting when our thoughts are just perfectly articulate.
Like we have to be flawless before we even open our mouths.
Exactly. We are absolutely terrified of being seen as a work in progress. But, and I want to set the tone right up front here, this isn't an intervention about procrastination.
Right.
Looking at the hidden psychology here, we are exploring a deeply human defense mechanism. Like, this isn't laziness, it's self-protection.
And I really want to ground this in what that protection actually feels like in our daily lives.
Yeah.
Because it hides in these incredibly small sensory moments, right?
Yeah, it really does.
Think about the evidence in those quiet hours.
Yeah.
Like the overthinking that keeps us awake.
The 2 a.m. overthinking.
Yes. You are sitting there in bed, and the glow of the screen is the only light in the room, and you are typing out this really heartfelt message.
Right.
Maybe it's a vulnerable apology or confessing how much someone means to you, or just reaching out to an old friend after years of silence.
And it's so hard to find the right words.
It is. So you type it out, you delete a line, you rewrite it to ensure it captures like the exact frequency of your heart.
Yeah.
And then you just leave it in the drafts. Forever. You never hit send.
Wow. Yeah, that blinking cursor in the draft folder it's a perfect microcosm of this behavior.
It really is.
Because when you look at the sequence of events there, the emotion driving the message was completely genuine.
Right. You really meant it.
Exactly. The desire to connect with that friend was real. But somewhere between typing the words and actually hitting send, your brain runs this rapid risk assessment.
Oh, wow. A risk assessment.
Yeah. It anticipates the potential for a lukewarm response, or worse, being totally misunderstood or rejected.
And that just paralyzes you.
Totally. The fear of how that message might be received just paralyzes the action. The brain decides it's safer to experience the dull, familiar ache of a missed connection than the sharp, unpredictable sting of a rejected one.
That is so true. And it spills over from our relationships right into our passions, too.
Yeah.
Like, think about the physical objects sitting in our rooms right now.
Oh, the abandoned hobbies?
Yes. You save up, you finally buy that really expensive hobby equipment, like a beautiful high-end camera or a premium set of paints and canvases.
And you're so excited at first.
Exactly. You bring it home, unbox it, and feel that initial rush of pure excitement. But instead of actually using it, the camera goes right back into its protective case.
Right.
It sits perfectly pristine in the corner of the room gathering dust
Yeah.
because you suddenly fear you just aren't skilled enough to use it yet.
Yeah.
You tell yourself, oh, I need to watch 10 more tutorials before I even charge the battery.
Yeah, we convince ourselves we are respecting the tools when really we are just totally intimidated by them.
We really are.
You hold that camera and the internal narrative just shifts from, I am going to create something, to, I am going to ruin this with my lack of skill.
Yeah. Wow.
So the camera becomes this monument to your intention rather than a tool for your actual expression.
And honestly, why do we do this? Because on the surface, to anyone looking at us, it just looks like we bought a camera and got bored, or we wrote a message and got distracted.
Right.
Like, is it just that we are being lazy? Are we lacking discipline?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, calling it laziness is the most common misdiagnosis we make. And it does a massive disservice to how complex our brains actually are.
Okay, so what is it then?
When we look at the psychology behind this, we see it isn't a lack of discipline at all. It's a highly calibrated, brilliant psychological defense mechanism. Your brain is essentially putting your ego into safe mode.
Oh, safe mode, like when a computer system crashes and restarts with only the bare minimum functions running.
Exactly. To prevent further damage.
So wait, how does leaving a beautiful camera in a box act as safe mode for our ego?
Well, think about the core function of a computer's safe mode. It shuts down all the high-end, complex software to protect the operating system from a fatal error.
Right.
Our minds do the exact same thing with our self-esteem. If you take that camera out, go down to the street and take a picture, you are suddenly running the complex software of vulnerability. You have created something in the real world, and that something can now be judged. You might take a truly terrible photograph.
Or that friend might reply to your deeply heartfelt text with a cold one-word answer.
Exactly. And to the ego, that kind of exposure and potential shame is the psychological equivalent of a system crash.
Meaning, the brain calculates that trying and failing is a fatal error for our self-worth.
Yes, precisely.
So by keeping our talents and our words locked away, we are executing this preemptive strike against failure. If I never truly try, I can never truly fail. I am shielding myself from the sting of external criticism.
And we really have to remember why the brain perceives criticism as such a massive threat.
Why is it so terrifying?
If we strip away the modern context and look at this intuitively, social judgment used to be a matter of life and death. Thousands of years ago, if you were judged poorly and rejected by your tribe, you were cast out into the wilderness alone.
Oh, wow. And you wouldn't survive that.
No, you wouldn't. And our brains are still wired with that ancient hardware. The brain doesn't always know the difference between a modern text message being ignored and a prehistoric tribal council rejecting you.
It just feels exactly the same.
It does. It just senses the risk of social rejection and immediately hits the brakes.
You know, this reminds me so much of keeping a beautiful, expensive outfit in the closet for a special occasion that just never seems to arrive.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy.
So it never gets
Yeah.
ruined, right? You know how we do that? We buy this gorgeous silk shirt or a heavy embroidered dress, and we say, like, no, not for this dinner. This is too casual.
Right. Or not for this party. It might rain and I'll ruin the hem.
Exactly. We keep it wrapped in plastic, smelling of naphthalene balls, waiting for the absolute perfect risk-free moment, and years go by.
Yeah. And then the fashion changes.
Or it doesn't even fit anymore.
Yeah.
But in our heads, it's still this perfect garment because it was never exposed to the wear and tear of the real world.
Right.
It feels intoxicatingly safe to hide behind the excuse of someday.
Because the closet is safe. The draft folder is safe. The unopened box is safe. We use perfectionism not as a tool to achieve excellence, but as a shield to avoid shame.
Wow, that is a subtle but massive difference.
It really is. True perfectionism would mean taking thousands of photos to get the perfect shot. What we are talking about here is the fear of being seen as an amateur, which is deeply tied to imposter syndrome.
We feel like frauds for even holding the camera.
Exactly. We tell ourselves we need to be fully formed, completely qualified, and totally immune to judgment before we even begin.
So, if we're protecting ourselves from judgment using this safe mode, the side effect is that we end up living entirely in our heads.
Yes.
We fall in love with our own untapped potential rather than who we actually are. And that's where this defense mechanism starts to eat away at us.
That is the real danger.
Because while we avoid the acute pain of failure, we invite this slow, chronic hollowing out of our identity. We lose our sense of self-worth because our entire identity becomes based on things we just haven't done.
You hit the nail on the head regarding identity loss. That is the true dark side of this emotional protection strategy. If you never take the camera out of the box, you can always comfort yourself with the flawless fantasy like, I could be an amazing photographer if I just had the time.
Right. If you never send the text, you can tell yourself, I am a deeply caring person. They just don't know it.
Exactly. The potential version of you has never made a mistake. They have never taken a bad photo or been rejected. It is an incredibly seductive fantasy to live in.
It really is.
Yeah.
We trade the messy reality of being a beginner for the pristine fantasy of being a dormant genius.
Yep.
But the cost is staggering. When I look at those unsent drafts or the unopened boxes, it creates this quiet nostalgia for a life I'm not actually living.
I know exactly what you mean.
It reminds me of going back to your childhood room and looking through your old notebooks. You see all these grand plans, these sketches of who you thought you would become.
And it hurts.
It does. You feel that sharp pain of looking back at a specific moment years later and realizing, I should have just spoken up. I should have just done it. We end up missing out on our own lives. But let me push back on this a little.
Please do.
I hear the danger of identity loss. But isn't there a functional utility to this fantasy? Like, isn't it somehow better to hold on to that perfect hope of what we could be, rather than try, fail, and realize we actually aren't good enough?
I completely understand why you'd ask that.
Because if I open the paints and my painting is objectively terrible, the fantasy dies right there on the canvas.
Yeah.
I have to face the hard fact that I am not the artist I thought I was.
Right.
In a world that is already so difficult, isn't the hope of our own potential sometimes the only thing that keeps us going on the tough days?
It is a deeply understandable fear. And you've articulated exactly why this defense mechanism is so incredibly stubborn.
Because it works, sort of.
Right. The fear of killing the fantasy is very real because the fantasy provides a comforting emotional buffer without requiring any actual effort. But here is the flaw in that logic when we look at the psychological impact over time. Living under the weight of an imaginary perfect future is infinitely heavier and more exhausting than simply existing in a flawed reality.
Wait, really? Exhausting how?
Maintaining that fantasy takes a massive amount of subconscious mental energy.
Because it creates this constant cognitive dissonance, right?
Yeah.
Like a background app draining our mental battery.
Yeah.
Our brain knows there's a gap between who we claim to be in our heads and what we're actually doing in the real world.
Yes.
So we are constantly policing ourselves, constantly manufacturing excuses for why we haven't started, and just carrying around this low-grade guilt.
You're burning it all up just maintaining the illusion.
We think we are preserving our energy by not acting, but we are actually draining ourselves.
Yeah, that is the exact trap. The cognitive dissonance drains you. The hope you mention isn't actually comforting you. It's holding you hostage. You are carrying the crushing weight of the perfect self on your shoulders all the time. And the irony is, when you finally try and fail, when you make that terrible painting, yes, the flawless fantasy dies, but the relief that follows is profound.
Relief from failing.
Yes, because you are now actually in the arena. You have a starting point. You realize that you aren't a master painter, but you also realize that you survived the experience of making a bad painting.
The ego didn't completely crash.
Exactly. The world didn't end. By facing the reality, you eliminate the cognitive dissonance, the imaginary burden is lifted, and you finally have the bandwidth to actually learn and grow.
So the way out of this cycle isn't to wait until we feel completely ready or confident. The way out is to deliberately turn off the safe mode, knowing that the system might glitch, and just embracing the vulnerability of being a beginner.
Yes, we have to surrender the ego. Taking that camera out of the box, putting the battery in, and taking a blurry, poorly framed photo means actively dismantling the fantasy of perfection.
It's scary, though.
It is. It requires a profound vulnerability to be seen, even just by yourself in an empty room as a beginner. You have to be willing to say, I am not perfect today, and I am going to do this anyway. Confidence is the result of doing the thing, not a prerequisite for starting it.
Which brings us to the core truth we pulled from these insights today. A flawed, active present is infinitely better than a flawless, imaginary future.
Absolutely.
A messy, awkward conversation where you stumble over your words is infinitely better than a perfectly crafted apology that just sits in your drafts forever.
So true.
A poorly lit photograph that captures a genuine memory is infinitely more valuable than a pristine camera gathering dust in a dark corner.
When you look at it through that lens, you realize how much life is waiting for you on the other side of that initial discomfort. You have to endure the brief, awkward phase of being a beginner to access the joy of actually participating in your own life.
And when we think about how much energy we waste pretending we aren't ready, we construct these massive, elaborate walls of someday, and when I have more time, or when the lighting is perfect.
Yeah, all the excuses.
But the reality is, you cannot think your way into being ready. You can only act your way there. When we withhold our energy, we think we are protecting it, like that silk shirt in the closet. But naphthalene balls don't keep an outfit alive.
No, they don't.
They just preserve it like a fossil. Clothes are meant to be worn. They are meant to get a little wrinkled, maybe get a small tea stain on the sleeve that reminds you of a great laugh you had at a cafe. That wear and tear is the fabric of a lived life.
That wear and tear is the evidence of your existence.
Yes.
To summarize what we've unpacked today, withholding your true personality, your love, and your ambitions out of fear doesn't preserve them for the future. It just guarantees they slowly fade away in the dark.
It's so sad when you frame it like that.
It is. The safe mode we use to protect our ego from shame is so restrictive that it locks us in place. We trade the rich, unpredictable reality of our living identity for the cold comfort of untapped potential. But the beautiful part of this is that it is entirely solvable.
It just takes one small, messy action to break the spell. Hitting send on the draft, even if there's a typo.
Exactly.
Taking the camera out and taking a picture of your coffee cup.
Yeah.
Wearing the nice embroidered shirt on a random Tuesday just because you can.
You step out of the fantasy and choose to exist in reality. The door out of that waiting room is completely unlocked. You just have to be willing to walk through it without having all the answers and without the guarantee of success.
To you, listening right now in the quiet of this room, we know this feeling intimately. The imposter syndrome, the fear of judgment, the heavy blanket of perfectionism, these are universal struggles.
They really are.
You are not alone in having a pristine box in the corner of your room or a folder full of unsent words. But just because these feelings are universal doesn't mean they have to be permanent.
No, you don't have to live in the drafts folder of your own life forever.
So, as we let the quiet settle back in, and as you finish that cup of chai, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over in the dark.
We've spent so much time curating this perfect future version of ourselves. We think we are doing ourselves a massive favor by waiting until we are fully equipped and entirely ready. But what if the best version of you that you are saving for later isn't actually waiting for you to be ready at all, but is simply waiting for you to be brave enough to be seen making a mistake today?